Brooksville, a city known for its industrial roots, was home to Steelworks Industries, a leading steel manufacturer that had been part of the community for decades. Jack Lawson, a seasoned veteran in the business world, had worked his way up from the ground floor to become the senior vice president of sales at Steelworks. Over the course of 15 years, he had grown the company's sales from a modest $5 million to a staggering $50 million. His efforts weren't just measured in numbers, though. What made Jack successful was the bond he formed with every client, relationships that went beyond business, built on trust, shared experiences, and mutual respect. Jack was the kind of sales leader who knew his clients like family. He knew their kids' names, their favorite vacation spots, and even the small details that could make a difference in a business deal. When clients needed something, anything, they called Jack before they called anyone else. He wasn't just selling products, he was selling trust. His approach had transformed Steelworks into a powerhouse in the steel industry, and his leadership was largely responsible for the company's impressive growth. But change was coming. The acquisition of Steelworks by a global conglomerate, Horizon Group, had already been a tumultuous transition. New faces had started appearing in the boardrooms, unfamiliar faces with slick presentations and cold, analytical approaches to business. Jack, while apprehensive about the changes, was confident that his client relationships would weather the storm. He had always known how to adapt to shifts in the market, and he was sure his decades of experience would give him the leverage he needed. Then Claire Matthews walked into the picture. Claire, the new sales director, had arrived with the acquisition, bringing a sense of sharp efficiency and a polished corporate aura that contrasted with the personal, hands-on approach Jack had spent years building. Claire, a Harvard MBA with a penchant for data-driven decisions, was on a mission to reshape Steelworks into a lean, mean, profit-generating machine. Her first month was spent in meetings, analyzing spreadsheets, and scrutinizing every aspect of the company's operations. Jack first met Claire in a high-rise conference room overlooking the sprawling steel mills that had been the backbone of Steelworks. Claire sat across from him, her designer suit perfectly pressed, her tablet in front of her as she slid a paper toward Jack. Her expression was unreadable, but Jack could see the determination in her eyes. "Jack," she began, tapping her nails on the sleek surface of her tablet, "I've been reviewing your compensation package, and it's clear that we need to make some adjustments." She paused for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Your base pay will be cut by 40%, and we're restructuring the commission model to better align with industry standards." Jack's heart sank, but he didn't let it show. He'd worked hard for every dollar, every ounce of respect he had earned. To him, it felt like the company was throwing away years of hard-won relationships just to chase a quick dollar. But Claire, in her drive for efficiency and bottom-line results, didn't see it that way. To her, Jack was an expensive relic of a time that had long passed. She continued, "The new structure will incentivize growth and improve profitability for everyone. You've done great work, Jack, but this change is necessary if we want to remain competitive in this market." Jack stared at the document in front of him. It was a cold, impersonal breakdown of how his pay was about to be slashed. His commission structure was now set up in a way that, even with growth, would make it nearly impossible for him to earn anywhere near what he had been making. There were also benefit reductions, cutting into the perks that had once made his position attractive. For a moment, Jack thought about pushing back. He thought about asking for more time, negotiating the terms, perhaps even presenting a counteroffer. But he knew the company had already made its decision. They didn't want to negotiate with him. They wanted to make him disappear, like so many others in the corporate world who were no longer seen as useful. "Is there a timeline for this transition?" Jack asked, his voice steady, betraying none of his emotions. "Effective immediately," Claire replied. She offered a tight, businesslike smile. "We need everyone on board with this new direction if we want to move forward." Jack stood up, extending his hand in a calm, professional manner. "Thank you for the clarity, Claire," he said, his voice even and controlled. He walked out of the room, not with a sense of defeat, but with the quiet resignation of someone who had been through enough change to understand when a fight wasn't worth it. As Jack made his way back to his office, the weight of the decision felt heavier with every step. His team, the accounts he had spent years cultivating, the relationships he had nurtured, all of it seemed like it was about to be swept away by someone who didn't understand what he had built. When he returned to his office, he started packing his things. There was no drama, no shouting matches, just the careful process of taking a few personal items off his desk. A photo of his daughters at their college graduations, a pen set from a longtime client, an old sales award that had long since lost its shine. As he gathered his things, he glanced toward the hallway and caught a glimpse of Claire watching him from her office. She had expected anger, resistance, perhaps even a scene. But Jack gave her none of that. Instead, he simply nodded at the familiar faces in the office as he walked past, his mind already turning to what he would do next. Jack Lawson had always been a man of relationships. As he walked out of Steelworks Industries for the last time, his thoughts weren't on his cut salary or the corporate upheaval, but on his clients, the ones he had worked with for over 15 years. He had been the bridge between Steelworks and some of the biggest names in the industry. His clients had come to trust him, rely on him, and even become his friends. It wasn't just about business anymore, it was personal. But Claire Matthews didn't see it that way. The day after Jack's departure, Claire began to implement her new strategies for the company. She scheduled calls with Jack's key clients, circumventing him completely. It didn't take long for Jack to hear from Frank O'Reilly, his largest client and longtime friend, who was confused by Claire's outreach. "I got a call from some woman this morning," Frank said, his voice tinged with frustration. "She said she's taking over our account. I'm not sure who she is, but we've been working with you for over a decade. What's going on?" Jack exhaled slowly, understanding the challenge Claire was about to face. "It's Claire Matthews," he explained. "She's the new sales director. She's got some new ideas, but you and I both know that this isn't the way things work around here." Frank was no fool. He had seen the kind of business Jack had built and couldn't understand why things were changing so abruptly. "Look, Jack, if you're not staying with Steelworks, we need to talk. I'll take my business elsewhere if that's what's best for us. I can't afford to deal with someone who doesn't understand the nuances of our work. Let me know what's going on." Jack nodded. He had a choice to make, but he didn't feel pressured. His clients weren't just a revenue stream. They were a network of people who respected him and valued the partnership they had built. Jack knew he couldn't let go of them just because Claire wanted to optimize the relationships into a system that removed the human element. That evening, Jack sat in his home office, looking over the reports from the past decade. Sales figures, client records, growth metrics, they all pointed to one thing. Jack had made Steelworks a success, not just with his sales tactics, but with the trust he had built. The relationships he'd cultivated over 15 years were worth more than just money. They were a foundation. But in Claire's eyes, they were an obstacle. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a text from Gabriella, one of his newest hires. He'd trained her personally, and they had worked together closely before the acquisition. She was one of the young reps Jack had hired, full of ambition and eager to learn. Gabriella's message was brief but cryptic. "I had lunch with Claire today. She's making some big changes. I'm just getting to know the team." Jack frowned, reading between the lines. He could tell that Gabriella was being brought into Claire's inner circle, and that couldn't bode well for him. He had trusted Gabriella, but Claire's presence was shifting everything. He wasn't surprised to hear that she had been recruited by Claire to support her changes. What Jack had suspected was now confirmed. Claire was moving quickly, replacing him, and reconfiguring the company to fit her own vision. Jack wasn't going to fight her. Not yet, anyway. The following week, Jack made his decision. He would leave Steelworks and start fresh. The relationships he had built weren't tied to a company or a title. They were based on trust and mutual respect, and he knew they would follow him wherever he went. Jack wasn't going to beg to stay in a place that had forgotten what really mattered. Jack finalized his resignation letter, packed up his office, and left Steelworks behind. His years of loyalty had been repaid with a cut in pay and a restructuring of his commission. Exactly the kind of impersonal decision that had been made in cold boardrooms, far from the clients who trusted him. But as Jack loaded his personal items into the trunk of his car, he didn't feel defeated. He felt liberated. The next morning, Jack picked up the phone. His first call was to Daniel Harrison at Pinnacle Supplies, a company Jack had met at an industry conference the previous year. Pinnacle had been looking to expand their commercial millwork division, and Jack had already been considering his options before the latest upheaval. Now, he was ready to make the move. "Daniel, it's Jack Lawson. I wanted to talk about the opportunity you mentioned last year. I'm ready to make a change, and I think Pinnacle might be the right place for me," Jack said, his voice steady, confident. It was time to take control of his future, and Pinnacle was the right fit. Daniel's response was immediate and positive. "We'd be thrilled to have you, Jack. You've got exactly what we need: a proven track record, strong relationships with top-tier clients, and the experience to build something great here. Let's make it happen." Jack felt a sense of excitement he hadn't felt in months. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a chance to build something from the ground up again. Pinnacle was a growing company, and with his expertise, Jack could help them leap forward. The clients he'd brought with him, like Frank and others, would follow him. They trusted him, not the company. That afternoon, Jack made another call, this time to Frank O'Reilly. "Frank, I've made a decision. I'm leaving Steelworks. I've got a new opportunity, and I think it's going to be the right fit for both of us." Frank didn't hesitate. "Jack, you know I'm with you. You've always been there when we needed you. Let's talk about what this new venture looks like." Jack smiled. The groundwork was laid. His next move was clear. As Jack finalized his plans to join Pinnacle, he reflected on the years he had spent building Steelworks and the relationships that had made it all possible. He had always believed in doing the right thing for the long-term benefit of his clients. Claire's approach, with her cold, data-driven metrics, might be effective in the short run, but Jack knew in his heart that it would be his relationships that would drive success in the future. 2 weeks had passed since Jack Lawson left Steelworks. The transition had been swift, but his confidence never wavered. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from former clients, some curious about his next move, others expressing concern over the changes they had heard were coming to Steelworks. Jack had never been the kind of person to hide behind corporate walls or vague language. He was straightforward, and now, more than ever, that honesty was paying off. Jack had joined Pinnacle Supplies as Senior Vice President of Business Development, and the reception had been warm. His former clients, the ones who had grown accustomed to his personal touch and deep industry knowledge, were already following him. Frank O'Reilly from Weston Commercial was the first to call, and soon after, others like Harold Lang from Northwell Construction, who had worked with Jack for years, were reaching out too. They weren't just following a business leader, they were following the trust Jack had built over the years. "I didn't know where you were going, Jack, but I knew it wasn't going to be long before we saw each other again," Frank had said over the phone. "We're moving our business over to you. If you're handling it, I know we'll be fine." With Frank and others following him, Jack started to see Pinnacle Supplies blossom. What had been a relatively small operation quickly began to gain momentum as Jack's reputation brought in high-value contracts. Within 2 months, the division Jack had been given to lead was already outperforming projections, and it was clear that Jack's track record of building trust was the key ingredient to their success. Meanwhile, Steelworks was starting to feel the sting of its decisions. Claire Matthews had been so intent on restructuring and optimizing the company that she failed to realize the true value of what Jack had built. As Jack's former clients made the shift to Pinnacle, Steelworks began to hemorrhage accounts. The new strategy Claire had implemented, focused on automation and impersonal systems, wasn't sitting well with longtime partners who had come to rely on Jack's hands-on approach. Jack, however, wasn't focused on Steelworks' problems. He was focused on moving forward, helping Pinnacle grow, and ensuring that every client he brought with him felt valued. He worked tirelessly to ensure that the transition for each account was seamless, making sure that his old clients felt they had the same level of attention they had grown accustomed to, if not more. One day, Jack received a call from Thomas, the former CFO at Steelworks. Jack had always gotten along with Thomas, and their bond of mutual respect remained intact despite the corporate divide. "I never thought I'd be the one reaching out, but here we are," Thomas said, his voice tinged with a hint of guilt. "Jack, I just wanted to let you know what's happening over here. They're already trying to implement price hikes across all legacy accounts next month. And it's not just about the money. Claire's been talking about restructuring the entire sales team, even bringing in new regional managers to replace your people." Jack didn't say anything for a moment. He knew exactly what Thomas was talking about. Claire's aggressive strategy was designed to maximize profit quickly, but at the cost of alienating the very clients who had made Steelworks successful. Jack's clients weren't just buying a product, they were buying a relationship that had taken years to cultivate. "They can't just take a sledgehammer to something that's been built brick by brick," Jack said quietly. "They can, and they are," Thomas replied. "I had to bring this to your attention because I know how much it all meant to you. Steelworks will never be the same, Jack. You were the backbone." Jack felt a mix of emotions. Anger wasn't one of them, just a quiet resolve. It had become clear to him that his value wasn't in his title at Steelworks, nor in his paycheck. His value was in the trust he had built with people. And now, those people were coming with him. But things were about to get even more interesting. One afternoon, as Jack was reviewing new contracts at Pinnacle's offices, his phone buzzed with a message from Frank. The text read, "They're pushing hard at Weston. Claire's been calling me daily, offering to beat any competitor's price by 5%. Don't know what to make of it." Jack's response was calm but direct. "Tell her I'm happy to talk if she thinks we're not meeting your needs, but you know where we stand." The next morning, Frank called again, his tone more urgent. "We're putting it out to bid, Jack. I'll be honest with you, I'm looking at more than just price here. I need someone who understands our business, someone I can trust to answer the phone when a project is in trouble." Jack smiled. This was exactly the moment he had been waiting for. It wasn't just about price, it was about trust. The one thing Claire didn't understand. The bid went to Pinnacle. Weston Commercial signed a 2-year contract worth $4.2 million annually, and Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This wasn't just about winning a contract, it was about proving that business wasn't just about numbers, it was about relationships. A few weeks later, Jack got the news that Steelworks was struggling. Claire Matthews had been reassigned to strategic development after the company's revenue projections fell short, and the client attrition rate was higher than anyone had anticipated. Thomas reached out again, this time with a different kind of message. "It's bad, Jack," Thomas said. "They didn't see it coming. I think they thought they could just replace you with automation and a couple of new managers, but it's all falling apart." Jack didn't feel vindicated, just focused. He had seen this coming, and he knew exactly how to fix it. In the months that followed, more clients followed Jack to Pinnacle. By the end of his second month, 4 of his former top 10 accounts had moved, and each transition had been flawless. Jack's team at Pinnacle had grown, his new division was thriving, and the market was taking notice. Then, one day, Claire Matthews reached out to Jack. She wanted to meet. Jack agreed to a coffee shop near Pinnacle's office, curious to hear what she had to say. When Claire arrived, she looked different, less polished, more worn. Her once confident stride was now hesitant, and Jack could see the weight of the last few months had taken its toll. "I made a miscalculation," Claire admitted. "I didn't realize what I was losing when I pushed you out." Jack didn't offer a word of comfort. Instead, he took a sip of his coffee, his expression unchanged. "You didn't value what you had, Claire," he said simply. "And now, the market is speaking for itself." Claire didn't seem to know how to respond. "The market is talking about how you took down a company without saying a word," she said quietly, as though looking for some sort of absolution. "I didn't take it down," Jack said, standing up. "I just did what I've always done, kept my promises." As Jack left the coffee shop, he couldn't help but think about how much he had learned in the past few months. The trust he had built, the relationships he had fostered, had proven far more valuable than any commission structure or title. And now, as Pinnacle's newest division continued to soar, he knew that the work he had done over 15 years would last far longer than any corporate decision. It was about doing the work. It was about keeping your promises. And in the end, it was about valuing relationships over transactions.